Hello, everyone, and welcome to our first painting webinar of 2023. Sorry for the little delay, and I'm in a different room. It's just changing, but I just wanted to get started and also welcome everyone. Thanks for being here. We're excited. Thanks for the support. It's so nice to see. We missed you guys, so it's so nice to see everyone joining. We appreciate the feedback that we've gotten for the proposed theme that we're gonna use to kick off the year, and I'm just gonna do a couple of things and before we start, but essentially, okay, let me just hold on a second. Oh, here we go. Just welcoming Jen to the chat and to the session. All right, so yeah, I need to do something about the light, but I will just figure it out. So P-22, if you got a chance to, today, by the way, for future humanoids, robots, and hybrids is Friday, January 13, really good luck day, 2023, and welcome. Thanks for 50 gold stars for the ones who are attending live. Extra spoonful of love to you guys. And if you're watching this from the future, we hope you enjoy it. So I'm going to start sketching in a minute, but we just uploaded some images of P-22 in the folder. And let me see, one second. And in the email that we sent, we mentioned, hold on one sec. Yeah. Okay, in the email that we sent, we mentioned that we didn't find many images. So we usually bring attention to the fact that for every painting collection, we encourage, we try, we make sure that we make a point about every one of us using a different image. So the collection in the end has a diversity of points of view, not only styles. But with this specific case, it was very hard to find a lot of images of P-22. The way the images have been collected range from professional trap cameras to people getting snapshots in their Ring and Nest cameras in their backyards. And so some of them, they feel almost like warlike. This reminds me a little bit of the image of the last soldier that left Afghanistan. I love that series that we did last year. So some of them are black and white, monochromatic. Some of them are more National Geographic-like. So first of all, pick whichever image, even if it's the exact same image that someone else is using. I would say just go for it. There's so many images or so much artwork that has been created using the same image that I think in this case, conceptually, it doesn't affect the intention. So that's why we didn't request anyone to select if you want to put your name or not. But pretty much we open, unless you have a dispute, we open the pool of images that we compiled to anyone who, anyone who wants to choose whichever image. And really quickly, I promise I'm going to start sketching in just 1 second. I just want to share the images really quickly. I chose this image right here. This one right here. Anyone's welcome to choose any images, but I just felt that I have a tendency to root for the underdog, and that applies to pretty much all the things. So I just thought that the images that showed like lower quality images with odd cropping, I was interested in looking at those. So I chose this one, and again, everyone's welcome. So some of them are more interesting. these were images, by the way. There was an episode. We've been learning a lot about the whereabouts and the episodes and the news that P-22 has generated, especially in the last few months of his life. And one of the episodes, which was featured in a local news, in the local news, they found P-22 in a dwelling, in a private residence underneath the house, in one of those, I don't know what you call the space between the house, and it's not a basement, but he was hiding underneath the house. And these are some of the images that we're taking, which I also personally find very interesting, because, you know, this is a very iconic wildcat, and murals have been made using specific images as reference. But I find something interesting about the fact that this shows partial of the face, just one eye, and it's more emotional. It's less red carpet like, and more dramatic. So even this one is fantastic. It's unpredictable and unusual. But anyhow, so this is the range. So we found websites that claim to have images from P-22 or off P-22, and we recognize the face. It's just really interesting. After watching so many images, you can actually recognize the physiognomy, I think that's a word, of the face. There's something about this shaded area between the lips. So I'm not sure, I'm not 100% sure that this specific image right here is of P-22. It seems to have like different markings, and even the personality on the face is different. Although we found it in an article that claimed this was when P-22 ate a koala in the zoo. That doesn't mean like we cannot use it. I find it very dramatic, also an interesting game of light and shadow on the side, and compositionally it's also very interesting. Just be aware that if you find the actual source later and you discover that this may not be P-22, please don't start a legal case against us. No one needs to know if it's the actual image of him or not. For the purposes of what we're doing, this could be any image. And on that note, I'm just gonna stop sharing, and also welcome everyone else. And also, I think, all right. So hi, Jen, how are you? Happy New Year.
Hi, friends.
Hi.
How are you guys? It's so good to see your face, Julio.
Oh, well, thanks. Yeah, it's been quite a month. Very interesting, between atmospheric rivers and
Real.
yeah. So we haven't had a chance to be outdoors much, right?
Right.
We haven't,
Yes.
in fact, yet.
No, I know I've definitely missed it. My life is less than without
Oh,
it all. So I'm so happy to be back and to be celebrating P-22, like the symbol of Los Angeles. I really
um,
love that we're painting him.
the I just sorry, I just stepped on your toes, but I forgot to mention to everyone who is watching, present or from the future, you brought it up first. I just wanted to acknowledge that you mentioned we should do portraits of P-22, and you were the first
Ah,
person. So just wanted to give you credit and acknowledge.
well, thanks, friend. I get one a year, you guys. One brilliant idea a year, and this is gonna be it. So January 14th, that's gonna do it.
No, you always do. So I just wanted to make sure that I acknowledge that. And
Oh,
it's
thanks, friend.
it's so hard because we put, over the years, it's been now a few years, that we do the collections, and we've been painting together for a long time. But I think every year, the first session of, thanks, Dina, the first session of each year, it's significant, or it has a lot of significance, and it has meaning, and kind of like sets the tone for the rest. And, you know, we were just thinking, and, you know, I wasn't sure. There's so much negativity, there's so much positivity, also anticipation. But the more I learned about P-22 that I wasn't aware of, it just made me realize that what he represented for so many people was something that I never thought of. So I think there's plenty of meaning, and yeah, so I just thought it was a really great way of starting the year, right? Yes. Anyhow.
Absolutely. 100%.
Cool. So I'm just gonna switch, and I'm gonna do this maybe monochromatically. So I chose that image, and I found this board. I think it's 12 by 16. I was debating, and I'm just gonna do horizontal orientation. I'm gonna talk about my pictorial space and format for pictorial surface, painting surface. So this is a board. It's a gesso board. I'm trying to reuse materials, and I've had this for a while. And this room, so I prefer smaller. 9 by 12 is my favorite size, but 12 by 16, I believe it's this one. I felt like last year, it was so nice to actually, by the way, no pointing and with no aim to do anything other than saying that we've been working the past few sessions, and mostly the whole December and beginning of January, in reviewing some of the or all the collections that we did since 2022, and it was nice to actually see them all together. It makes you really appreciate the actual progress. We're not trying to shame anyone, but one of the things that I felt is that I wanted some more of a permanent, more of a permanent surface somehow. I love the oil paper that we use, and that's super valid, but I'm gonna try as much as I can. I'm gonna try to bring up like harder surfaces, just because I feel like personally for me, I take the work more seriously if the board or the surface is more permanent. But that's just me, and it's a thought that I just had looking at all the work and thinking, how can I balance the little time that I have to paint with my own body of work. And I feel that kind of like fits my both things. I want to do something more permanent using like harder surfaces, and use the themes that we propose as part of my body of work. So anyhow, that's not going to be the case for everyone. I love, I'm going to bring up Dina. I love that you use like much smaller and surfaces like paper. I've seen painters use reclaimed materials. I think that's something that it's very good as well. But that's where I'm at. So I've seen some interpretations of P-22. Not many, to be honest. I'm so excited to create something for the collection, because I think if we, and I'm so excited also that there are so many of us doing this, because I feel like, you know, all together we can be much of a greater voice to perhaps communicate this with someone else, or maybe tell someone else that we're doing this, and perhaps establish that connection. We discovered a lot of people that have been trying to raise attention to, in this case, P-22, but that's not the only being that people care about. So there are a lot of people behind the curtain, the media curtain, that have been trying to talk about conservation, talk about how we can stop the elimination of biodiversity, how we are living with wildlife, even though we think we're in a city. And so, yeah, this could be an opportunity to connect with those people. Perhaps I'm just gonna do my first potato shape. So the images that I found, some of them are more on the hyper-realism take. And but the most interesting ones to me were the ones where the artist infused a stylistic novelty. So take on this, not from the perspective of trying to make it look perfect, but from the perspective of allowing yourself to be creative and to infuse style. I'm going to use a monochromatic palette. Maybe I'll just bring some color. I'm thinking of Laura. If you want to just bring up a lot of saturated color, go for it. So I think the more artistic the approach, the more interesting the collection of paintings. So don't feel like you have to be accurate with proportions or likeness. Try not to judge the work that you're doing based on how rigorous your outcome is. That would be my take, and I think that's what I'm going to try to do. So my I cannot do like alignments with the yardstick, but I'm just gonna enlarge what I see, and then I'll just take it from there. So silhouette all the way, silhouette work. I'm making some marks right here. I'm gonna try to build a shape and also take advantage of some of the crop lines along the two sides of the image. And then I'll just do some manipulations of the shape. Negative space, very important. Some of the images contain a very nice background. The majority are taken during nighttime. So there are a lot of like cutout shapes that we could use. So as negative space. So the way I would explain how that works, I would just, for example, this shape right here, I would treat it as an actual positive shape. And I would look at the edge of the silhouette towards the background rather than just towards the focal point. I have a single focal point on my image. So try not to create too many dark lines, repetition, simplification. Let's kind of like go back to the basics of what we're trying to achieve. We're in stage one, we are organizing our space, we are thinking very much entirely about composition. How do we organize the space that we have? What's our format like? Is it square? Is it rectangle? Is it oriented on a portrait axis? Is it a landscape? How many focal points do I have? Where are the focal points on that image? Do I want to center the image within my format? How do I do that? And we need to retrofit that focal point within the background back onto our pictorial space. So that takes time. And I'm just going to try to hold everyone back. Don't rush through this. The spatial organization is such a monumental, important step in the entire painting process. Slow down, hold back. Even if you're not using charcoal, even if you started like blocking out, don't leave the spatial organization too far behind you already. Have it with you, have the premise with you, have the criteria with you. Try to pause and always step back. Every mark you make on the format, step back and see how it relates to the actual space that you're using, and then go back to it. But sometimes we put ourselves in a state of flow in which we grab a brush or the charcoal, and we feel like we are on top of a water slide that's a mile long. And two things happen. Number one, we are going down at an amazing speed. And number two, we can't stop and assess where we are in the slide. We cannot grab anything. And we just, yeah, that's until you kind of like end up in the pool. Sorry for the analogy, but I feel like it fits the process. Don't get into the water slide yet.
I feel like that's such a great analogy on when you're caught up in something like that, Julio. The water slide. I love it.
Thank you. So, Jen, thanks for being the eyes of roofless painters in your amazing travels. I cannot thank you enough.
Yay. Oh my gosh. I feel so fortunate that I have a place where I can share these things with people, like-minded people that also are excited about, the same thing or similar things and want to see them. So I'm very fortunate. But yeah, I know I can't wait till we as a group get to see things together. That's my favorite.
That's also true. Any paintings that we talked about that you were actually physically saw? Maybe, or at
Yeah.
least painters.
Yes. Oh, and I'm so glad that Dina's on here because and I'm not sure if Lois is on here. Is Lois one of our participants today? Yes, she is. Okay. So I went to the Isabella Gardner Museum in hi Lois, in Boston, and I didn't really know anything about it, but it's essentially was um, this woman. Oh gosh, and I'm gonna totally butcher the history of it, but this woman from maybe late 19th century to early 20th century, perhaps. Um, uh, just multi-millionaire. Wow. And she built this house in this area of Boston at the time that that it kind of was a bit run down. It was like kind of built on like mud or so, like something where it was not attractive. Like people did not want to build there. They kind of thought she was crazy. And not only did she build a home, but she really wanted to build what she ended up building was this a gathering place, this a community place where people could come and listen to a symphony or come have like a space in the garden and this real like gathering place for the city. Mm-hmm. And like I said, people thought that she was bonkers. Anyway, of course, she builds it, and then everything around it just flourishes, and it becomes in the center of town. It is like one of the most sought after, spots in all of Boston. She's the talk of the town. She's brilliant. Of course, what happens to people. Anyway, she ended up living in this space. And when she passed, she said, I want you to open my home. I want people to come and see all the work that I've collected. She was a collector. And that being said, you cannot change a single thing about my home. Absolutely nothing can be changed. Now, that being said, they have had to, of course, over time, like, make things ADA compliant, upgrade the elevator. She had an elevator, but they had to upgrade it. And, things like that kind of build a little safety, within it. But other than that, you cannot change a single thing. Well, that it sounds lovely, except for the fact that this singular museum has had like the most amount of things stolen paintings and objects stolen from this museum. And evidently, there's a documentary. And I'll look it up, the name of the documentary, but I think it's on Netflix. You guys can certainly watch it. I've heard it's fascinating. I actually have not watched it yet, but it's about all of the art that has been stolen from this museum. But because nothing can be changed, what the people that stole the work is they just cut it out of the frame, and the frames are still hanging on the wall. So no new art. There's still things out. Like if you know, and it all was stolen in the 90s. If you know anything leading to these particular paintings that were stolen, you know, there's a reward out, the whole thing. But because of the integrity of the museum and her specific words, you know, that, like I said, the frame's still there. So it's like this, almost like this ghost story, you know, that you're walking through of these happenings within this museum and how you're sort of witness to it. But that, like I said, it hasn't been changed in a real way. Okay, so that's one story. Another thing is that because of her influence and because of her money, she, you know, of course, befriended like the most amazing people and painters and whatnot. And one of them was Anders Zorn.
Really?
And so she has a ton of work.
Zorn paintings.
Yes. And she has a ton of sketches. Zorn, like the Zorn paintings are everywhere. And I tried to take as many pictures as I could of, you know, his work, because we talk about his palette all the time. And I know that Dina works with the Zorn palette a lot. So yeah, so that was interesting. She had a portrait. I don't know if it was commissioned or if they were friends, but John Singer Sargent did a very large, full body portrait of her. But yeah, no, it was.
Wow.
And those are just off the top of my head. But there's another close relationship she must have had. His name I can't think of right now, because she had a lot of their sketches as well. But it was one of the most, Lois, I'm sure, can speak to it too. It's one of the most spectacular collections I've ever seen. And at the same time, Julio, oh my gosh, I just wanted to pick your brain about this so badly. Because of her, you know, very specific orders of not changing anything, they couldn't change the lighting. And
Oh, no way.
yeah, so you go into these rooms and they're small and they're filled with work, filled. But you can only get, you know, a certain, you know, closeness to them because of the furniture and whatnot. And because of the lighting, some of them you can like hardly see.
Oh my gosh.
Or like they're reflecting, you know, the light is reflecting off of it. So you kind of have to like be in just the right position to really see the paint. And oh man, it felt like this is one of the most like significant and incredible collections, but I can hardly see any of it.
Wow.
So, yeah, that was pretty wild.
Wow.
Yeah,
I've never heard any details about it. I think Victoria from the lodge, she worked there. And I
no
remember there was a case.
way.
Yeah, she worked there. She was involved with curation.
Yeah.
She replied to your post, by the way.
Oh, she did?
Yes. And she mentioned years ago the story of the latest theft. And
Yes.
she was in the museum and she experienced it, you know, obviously not the theft, but the day after when she came into work. Yeah, but to me, it just sounded like a theft from any other museum. I had no idea of this context. And
Yeah.
when I saw your photos, it struck me as odd that the things were hung crowded all together. It just didn't feel like a typical museum. And that was,
Right.
now it makes sense, but it crossed my mind.
It was, remember how, okay, we went into, I know my UK girls are on here. Oh gosh, this is so terrible of me, but
No,
I
I
always
know.
confuse the two.
I
Um, the
no
one,
idea. I
I
forgot.
know, I know. The
The something
museum,
house.
yeah, exactly. It's either Messums, I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that correctly,
Yeah.
or the other one. So terrible.
So,
So bad, but I think it was Messums. It was the one, the house that we painted from the garden.
Mompesson's.
Mumpison. Oh my gosh.
Arundel. Thanks, Lois.
Oh my
Mompesson's and
Lord.
Arundel. For heaven's
What
sakes.
the heck, you guys? This is my brain. I cannot speak for Julio, but my brain is a wreck. Yes, yes, exactly, Lois.
Thank you.
But thank you. When we were in there, and obviously that had like a similar vibe. Like, it was a house where someone lived, and there were, you know, pieces all over the place. And um, our amazing tour guide that like almost couldn't even speak to all of the art because there was so much. But that being said, it was bright, and
Oh, wow.
could get close and you could see it. And I don't know, there it was just this particular museum, gallery, house, whatever. It was, like I said, it was so dark. It was also like a winter day in Boston, which didn't help much. um so the windows, weren't like filled with sun or anything. But yeah, it was, from top to bottom of the walls. And yeah, it was just so hard to see, which was heartbreaking, a little bit.
Wow. There's so many places that I'd like to visit, but now this seems like a favorite museum just because of its art.
Oh, friend, I immediately thought of us, and I was like, okay, so
When are we going?
no, totally. And while I was there, I've always said how we need to do New England. I mean, we could spend an entire year in New England with all the, different spots. And, seriously, Lois, exactly. Me too. Between like the American history that's there, between, the shoreline, and,
Mm.
the the beaches there that are so different from our beaches here, and they're beautiful. And I mean, the winter sunsets there are just
Mm.
gorgeous. And then you think about like the big city part of it, of Boston itself. And like what we would paint there. And so I just had this like running tally in my head of like, okay, so how much did the museum cost, and could we paint there? And obviously we would take our painters there afterwards, and like,
Wow.
and then we would go to the North End, and we would have spaghetti and like,
Oh my gosh, I'm packing my
oysters.
bags.
Exactly, Lois. Me too.
Oh, yeah, I'm just ready to pack my bags. I don't care.
Ugh,
Sounded
I know.
lovely, and it's so it just makes me yearn for not only for what we experience obviously in Salisbury, but how amazing is to feel that when we travel, art is such an important part of the experience. Because everyone who travels has a different take on things, and some people just prefer the entertainment or the sightseeing,
Mhm.
which I think it's important, or the food, which I also think it's a great a great angle to tackle traveling.
For
But
sure.
how lucky we are that we find the art also very important.
Oh,
Because I think,
so lucky.
yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, no, no. You go. You go. You go.
No, no, no. It just feels like, when I saw your images and your experiences, you dedicated time, you allocated time, because these things don't happen easily. You may want to go to a place, we know how that works, and then you get distracted, you wake up late, or you have something to do, or and then it just goes. But thank you for allocating time, for making it a destination, and for actually just walking through it. Do you know how many times you brought up the jam? I know that that's not on this trip. It was the New York trip. But I've been like in conversations with curators and artists like all over the world, you know, in Clubhouse, and nobody knew jam. And when I spoke of it,
Right.
because of you, and I told everyone, you know, that, you know, you were there and blah, 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 people didn't have any idea. And now everyone, all of a sudden, you know, that's one of the best shows of 2022, Jen, by the way.
No way.
Yeah, one of the best shows of 2022. And by the way, Jam is JAM, just above Midtown, and it's a curated show at the MoMA that they did a fantastic show describing a gallery that existed at the time that was supporting minorities, although it's a word that I need to be careful to use because a lot of people don't like this word, but I did a good job. And then the MoMA just put together this exhibition, doing a lot of like self-reflection and almost like self-criticism in regards to saying, you know, while Jam was doing this and had this budget and everything, the MoMA had this budget and did this, and just putting the two things together. Well, anyhow, I don't want to go about, but thanks for bringing it up because nobody knew about it. And now all of a sudden it's the best thing ever.
Oh, you know, isn't it funny how that happens? Like, I feel like it's like such a human thing too, of like, you never hear about this particular word or this particular, you know, I don't know, idea. And then suddenly you know about it. And then it's like, oh, it's everywhere.
Yeah, you're right.
But, you know, those things happen for a reason. Like, you know, things really like, you know, cling on to people and you're attracted to them. And especially things you don't know anything about. Like, you know, I didn't go in there with the intention of even seeing that part,
Right.
that show. I had no idea what it was about. And then I just started walking through and I was like, what is this?
Right.
And then it connected to me so hard, you know, for going out for this group that saw no opportunity and saw, you know, like people that needed it and created this space for them, both physically and creatively. And I just felt like that, you know, we could connect so much to that. And like everything that, you know, that they are trying to do and did. And, you know,
we'll be at we may not be able to actually see the
Who
show.
knows though? Who knows? I'm guarantee you that they never thought, you know, that they would either. And someone was like, you know, did you happen to see, you know, that this group of people did this amazing thing, you know, kind of, I mean, sadly, you know, without anyone really knowing about it, you know?
Yeah. All right. Hold on to your paintings, you guys. Sign them.
Yes. And put Ruthless Painter on it.
Store them well.
Store them well.
Yeah, because you just never know. But thanks for bringing that perspective. I think that, yeah, that universal feeling of not being seen and believing in what you're doing, and regardless of visibility, but then, you know, seeing that happen somewhere else. I love that you had that extra layer because, you know, someone who may not be a painter or do something parallel or similar may have a different experience. But it's like when we went to that extra day in London and we went to the Milton Avery and we saw those little tiny landscapes at the beginning. And I thought, you know, Ruthless Painters. I mean, it was kind of like, oh my gosh, this is so what we're doing right now. That's such joys in seeing a painter before us that just did the same thing. And it just validates you and validates, it kind of like brings you or infuses you with this sense of like, yes, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And I'm going to continue doing it. Sometimes you get these mixed signals that make you feel like you're not doing the right thing and you should be doing something else. Sorry for the rambling, but yeah.
No, absolutely. And yeah, kind of that shared experience, right? Amongst artists. And yeah, exactly. And I already feel like I wonder how much when Jam was in its heyday, you know, when it was happening, and you know, there was this like, I mean, I don't know, I'm not sure. I can't, I don't know because I don't know that this really happened,
Mhm.
you know, in the 80s and 90s, but um, you know, of any of the kind of like self-reflection of Mocha or MoMA, and if, you know, and how Jam affected MoMA, or I mean, I hope that there was this self-reflection. I mean, like I said, who knows? And this could be very much like this did not happen until 2022. But I hope that there was this self-reflection within, you know,
Yeah.
MoMA, seeing what was happening outside of those doors
Yeah.
and thinking to themselves, we
Yeah.
don't have a lot of room,
Yeah.
you know, here with
Yeah.
that, you know, and like,
Yeah.
why not? You
Right.
know,
Yeah.
because I will say that walking through MoMA, I very much was blown away and impressed and kind of angry at
Mhm.
other museums for because MoMA did such an inclusive, beautiful job. And it made me really think about where I had been and that it hadn't, you know.
Mhm.
I don't know. But
No, it's hopefully you know, just some of the conversations. There's a catalog. I know there's a catalog, and I'm gonna order it
mhm,
online because
mhm,
it seems like that's gonna be sort of like one of the pivotal curating turns that museums are
mhm,
gonna look at. And I think,
absolutely.
yeah, so I'm thinking that, you know, maybe they're gonna set the tone for other museums to follow through, which, you know, that's progress,
Yeah.
say.
I'm going back in March, so I can get it for you. Oh, except it's
Oh,
only through February 18th, but they'll still have it if you want me to just bring it back for you.
oh no, it's okay. I think, well, I'm just gonna check what's the price. I think it's the same price because it's still in circulation. And by the way,
Yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah.
always, I mean, not that if you're a lover of books, it's always a good idea to buy the catalog when you go to see a show because you have no idea how many catalogs of shows, because it's a limited publication. They don't do republishing at all. I know they're
Right.
expensive and it's a huge investment because you have to pay for the entrance. It's getting more expensive. But if you love books, if you love art books, get those books because over time they gain so much value. The publishing, once they're all sold, that's it. And then they don't republish them. So many exhibitions that I want to get catalogs from, and they're $200, $500. Those are really valuable books. So yeah, anyhow, just wanted to
Mm,
mention that.
yeah. I remember you saying that.
Yeah.
That's great.
Um, Thanks for sharing all that. In the meantime, I was just kind of like able to do my wash. I was happy with the organization, the spatial element of it, and um, I confronted letting go of attachment of what it looked like. I thought, oh, this is so beautiful, and then boom, you know, it just it just came down. But we know how that goes, and I'm just excited that I covered the area. I went through the several stages of sketching in case someone who's not familiar with the process watches this at some point. Potato shape, revisiting the potato shape, doing structural lines, and then shading essentially. So adding some details and then shading, which was helpful in allowing me to revisit some of the lines and then start moving them. And then because it's monochromatic, I just use a little bit of the solvent with black, the chromatic black, and I just block darker to lighter, following an order, following the charcoal, the density of the charcoal. And it just allowed me to wet and apply some paint on the entire background. I want to remove any blank spaces. I want to make sure nothing is pristine, just because it affects your decisions. And I'm starting to kind of like follow this darker to lighter with a very thin layer, transparent consistency with the solvent and some paint. It's just a foundational step. So, and if you want more information, anyone who is not part of our tribe, then we repeat the same things over and over in previous. That's kind of like lazy, but and pretentious. Go watch another of the videos. But anyhow, so perfect timing. That's where I'm at. It's before the first hour. So one of the things that also we were just discussing with Darlene a few times with the winter study, we dedicated a chunk of sessions to just revisit previous works, as we did, as I mentioned, and also as a decision that we started making, I think last year, in which we see the entire year. It's just so amazing how every year we hone in on something specific about our process. We grow together, we make decisions together, and at the same time we grow individually. I cannot tell you, Jen, how great it was to just do less collections of paintings. How great it was to actually find a format that I was comfortable with.
Right.
So, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Yes,
spend more time on less work.
exactly. And
Love
then
it.
opened up so many other thoughts. So the structure of our year, like as a preview, we are going to have two main breaks. One is like summertime, June, July, just depends, but it's usually 4 to 6 weeks. And the other one is the winter break. So we call this like summer study and winter study, in which we take the opportunity to revisit. Because, you know, sometimes when you churn out paintings, you just move forward, but then you don't look back. And just giving yourself the time to look back and see all the paintings that you've done, it just gives you such clarity on where you stand, what the paintings actually need, if they need anything, and then what are going to be your main criteria moving forward with the next chunk. So we're going to do the same thing with 2023, just have two main pauses and about 15 to 17 painting collections, which I want to publish all my paintings. I want to create a book. I want to self-publish, you know, one of those things. I want to do it because it just feels so good. And also it kind of like makes you feel more serious about painting. We've also experienced so many, and I'm going to go ahead and do the first color notes and explain, but so many challenges. I was talking like precisely last night with an artist from New York, an artist and an art advisor and an art dealer who has lived in New York for almost like 20 years. And it was an amazing conversation in the sense that because of the books that we've read, we have learned that despite the pandemic, despite our facility to work together remotely, there is something to be said about working and living close or nearby either a strong community of painters or a center of art power, like a capital, a place in which there's a lot of money exchanging hands, lots of museums. There's something to be said about that. So I was kind of like talking with this person and explaining, do you feel like being in New York helps in that sense? It's not a guarantee of anything, but helps. And he agreed. He said, yes, you know, some of the people that I have met and that I'm friends with are on the upswing. They're just becoming slowly more connected, or they're just becoming like sometimes like faster, sometimes slower, but there's something about opportunities and museums and being able to go to an exhibit and make such an impact that you want to do something else with your work, and having this inspiration fuel your practice. My point, I know I have a point to make. It's the fact that, with the pandemic and what happened, we're never going to go back to the life that we had before. I'm not saying this in a catastrophic way, in the sense that, this wasn't just a pause in which, it happened for 3 years, and then we're going to go back to what we had before. Things are never going to be the same. It's going to be much harder to find time to do something like this. We're going to be more distracted, more interconnected, but with less time to do something creative. So that's why doing everything we can to not only to find time, obviously, that's why I appreciate that you guys we appreciate that you guys are here. But if you do one painting in 1 year, just make that the most amazing, serious, and ultimate piece of work that you think you can make, and almost thinking that you're never going to be able to paint again. So put that kind of energy when you do it, because it's a different context, it's a different reality, and I think the arts are getting affected, the traditional arts. So we come in, and we had these conversations, Jen, like in different ways and many times. That's why we are excited for hosting more trips, to give ourselves more opportunities to actually fight against this. But that's the reality. I think I never thought of it, but with this conversation with this person, it just made me realize that there's no going back. This is where we're at right now. Sorry, I know this is super philosophical, but what are your thoughts, Jen?
I love it. Paint as if you can never paint again.
Oh, crap.
I love it. I'm, a Libra, so the drama is amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, I think it's really, important, to, I think that what you're getting at is to, to really be intentional with your work, and,
Right.
to, like you always say, to slow down, to make decisions, to lean in, to be intentional. And I think, those are, as in all things, I feel like you say, are life lessons that are important, you know, period. So I love it. I think that sometimes, well, we get, or I'll just speak for myself, I get caught up in doing everything that I feel like I do nothing, or I, kind of look back and I'm like, like, I think if I were to step into that, and I think maybe at the heart of what you're saying is, if I was to step into what you were saying, you look back and you're like, I painted a lot this year. And then someone's like, oh, what did you paint? And then you're like, right.
Right. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
kind of like, oh, I had a great weekend. What did you do? Right. Like, I don't know. But I don't know. And maybe it's just easy to say because it was such a magical trip, but thinking about Salisbury and like how when we painted, we obviously were incredibly focused, and we're so, there. But I think more than anything, we were just so present because we had to be, right? It was like we went somewhere that we didn't know, that we were able to just singularly be and not look around, at our laundry staring at us, or, like our,
That's right.
kids asking what's for dinner, and, like all the things that and it's, I think too, is why we say, like, when people are like, should I bring my partner? And we're like, no.
No.
But it just becomes intentional because it can be. It's a privilege,
Right.
100%. But if we can apply that same energy to our everyday and to our Zooms,
Right.
like,
Yeah. No. Yeah. I
we'll
agree.
change
I agree.
yeah, practice. Yeah.
I agree.
So yes. Yes, yes, yes. Ooh, I think you're done.
You're so funny. Oh my gosh. No,
Ghost Cat, right? Isn't that his nickname too? Ghost Cat?
oh, really?
Oh, I think so, but I don't
Oh,
want to see. Okay, let
wow.
me look it up. I
Oh
think
my
that is
gosh.
one of his nicknames, Ghost Cat.
I was talking to Chloe, and she knows a person who is involved with one organization that created a campaign, the public campaign to bring awareness. And it's one of the most famous hashtags.
Mm-hmm.
Forgot the name, the hashtag now. Save LA Cougars. No, wait. Save LA something. I'll find out. Sorry, I don't know where my brain went there. But
Mm-hmm.
um they it's not, I couldn't find it online anywhere, but she hosted a birthday party at Skylight Books in Atwater, the bookstore that, you know, yeah. So, and apparently it was very successful. And I don't know exactly the day. I think there's a day that everyone has agreed is sort of like the birthday, but
Oh,
there are so many things that haven't made it to the webs, the interwebs, that are
sure.
people have done. And I had no idea about the Greek theater upcoming memorial on February, I think it's February 2nd.
Oh, me neither. I love that.
Yeah, so when I was just telling this to Kian, and then it's like, oh, that's funny because just yesterday on NPR they were just talking about the funeral service, and I said, funeral service? I think that's incredible. And then
Yeah.
I went online, and it's a memorial. Tickets are free, but parking is $20, and tickets are for sale, or meaning like you can reserve it. And
Mm-hmm.
it's just gonna, I'm thinking of like at least reserving maybe a couple of tickets, and I'm not sure if I'll be able to go, but because
Yeah.
it's gonna fill up.
No, totally. If it hasn't already, yeah. That's
Yeah, yeah.
amazing.
So they're just gonna do it's going to be a festival to pay tribute, music, but also uh, people that have been spokespersons for conservation, and also the people who discovered P-22, and conservationists that said that, and other people. So it seems like, I never, when it kind of like shows maybe whatever you want to call it, but I never thought that this was so meaningful for so many
Mm-hmm.
people. It was on the news, it was a sighting, and it was the time where, that cheesy program about wildcats, tigers, and stuff, with those horrible, horrible people. One of them ended up in jail, Tiger King or something like that.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I always felt that there was this fascination culturally, and specifically, I'm saying this without meaning to be singling any um, difference, and or trying to be like xenophobic or anything. This fascination with feline stuff, wildcats, and that
Right.
you could trace back with Hollywood celebrities having cats, and there's always been this fascination, and I felt like this was kind of like part of it. Okay, we have our own wild cat, and then we're just gonna chase after the cat, and yada yada yada. And only until I dug into it because of this, I realized that it was just much bigger than that. And when I heard
Right.
of the stories and why people, and also I think there was a memorial, some sort of a memorial, I don't know where, but when it's December 17th, I think a few days later, representatives of all the tribes and the indigenous groups, that the descendants of the indigenous groups in LA, they were all present. this was something that wasn't just a fad or a trend or something to get attention, something that the city wanted to, remain cool. I don't know how many tribes. I think there are like 6 or 7 collectives
Mhm.
or groups, and all the
Yeah.
major representatives were there.
Oh my gosh, I didn't know that. That's wonderful.
Yeah. So, all these issues about land and, indigenous culture and the rightful inhabitants of the land. I mean, it's just like so much, and
Right.
how he represented all those things before occupation, and who owns what, and people in reservations or people who are confined and we think they're free, but they're not. I mean, there's so many intersectional issues that come up when you talk about him, that they're not just, okay, let's just hunt and see where he's today.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks, Laura.
Yeah.
I never thought of it, and I feel a little dumb for not knowing, but especially because how many times someone passes away, an artist or someone who never gets the full attention, and then you realize, wow, this person was amazing.
Yeah. I'll join you. I really didn't know much about P-22. I don't even know if I'd heard of him, period, until I went to I think it's like the Natural Science Museum.
Yeah.
And
Natural
we were
History
taking
Museum, maybe.
yeah, and yeah, exactly. We were taking Henry, and he's probably like, I don't know, maybe 5, so it's probably like 4 years ago. And they had an entire like exhibit about
Yeah.
him.
Wow.
And yeah, it was kind of the first time, and I was like, wait, what
Anything
is
that
this?
stood out for you since you were to that exhibit? Because I think that's amazing. Tell us.
Ooh, I wish I had more information.
Mm.
I hesitate even telling you that I saw it because I'm like, what do I remember? Um,
Okay,
I
no.
think it was just about, like the things that I remember were more about like the fact that, like I said, it was the first time hearing about him. So it was
Yeah.
kind of those like that low hanging fruit that,
Right.
is like, oh my gosh, wait, what? And
Yeah.
they're keeping track of him, and so it was
Right.
kind of more like that. I can't say that there was like the nitty gritty that I was like, oh, I never knew that. It was just
Right.
this whole like, wait, what? Who is
Right.
this? What is
Right.
this? And then
Right.
kind of learning more about, Griffith Park too, of like
Right.
how ginormous it is. And I think that I was like, oh, that's so interesting that they, do have this, their eyes on this mountain lion that they can kind of, I don't know, use is the wrong word, but can kind of see like, okay, what's going on out there,
Yeah. Yeah.
and how are they living? Like, are they getting what they need? And,
Right.
and just all of it. It was, I think for me, I was kind of, um, pleasantly surprised that this was
Yeah.
happening,
Hmm.
but yeah, I remember it was a really big, then it was a photo. It
Hmm.
was, a whole wall of a photo of him. And I think it was the famous one with Hollywood in the background.
Right.
And then kind of talking about, and they had a trail of all the sightings of where he'd
Oh,
been, and
wow.
like had pinpointed it all over Griffith Park.
Hmm.
And that was incredible.
Hmm. Wow.
Let me see if they have anything. I mean, it might still be up. Let me see
Yeah.
what I
Yeah.
can
Find out,
find.
the thing that so from what I've gathered, the person who discovered the first paw,
Mhm.
um, was working at the time and currently working at the Natural History Museum, and
Mhm.
requested for the remains before he passed away to be there. They're not gonna, initially they thought they were just gonna do some taxidermy, but that's not gonna happen, which I think everyone's happy about, because
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. So, and um Yeah, anyhow, so I know that there was a permanent exhibit just because of what I read about this person being in charge or somehow connected with the Natural History Museum. But yeah, it's just like it's just so interesting how the symbolism expanded over the years, from wow, we have a wildcat, or he was able to cross 2 freeways, which, you know, nobody
Yeah.
is. Oh, and by the way, so apparently the funds to build that overpass,
Mm-hmm.
I forgot the area, but I think it's closer to you than it is to me. There's an overpass, and it required a lot of millions of dollars in order to allow wildlife to transfer or to
Mm-hmm.
move. So it just got funded. So I think that's officially happening.
Amazing. I just saw one. I went to a Joshua Tree for a couple of days, and on our way on the, I guess it was the 10, I saw an overpass that had done
Oh,
that,
really?
and it was so cool. I actually I never would have noticed it, but my girlfriends that were in the car pointed it out.
Wow.
Yeah, that's the coolest thing, and they said exactly for that, for animals to be able to pass more securely, and
Yeah.
yeah, we should be doing more of this.
Yeah, I think the project is not just one. The project is to do several.
Mm-hmm.
And so that one will happen, but it's not enough. Obviously, it's just a small. But yeah, at least I don't know. Yeah. So, and then there's also the controversy because, and I totally understand, just because there's so much, and it kind of like tells you, I'm gonna explain the controversy because I think it's important, not because of the fact itself. It's important because of the heightened emotional component of how people own the meaning of P-22 so much, and it's so intrinsic to their own representation, that I feel like when something happened, immediately there were voices saying that that was a conspiracy. So apparently, before he passed away, he killed a leashed Chihuahua in one of
Mm-hmm.
the affluent neighborhoods. And apparently also the people who monitored his health and stuff, they said that his behavior was becoming more erratic, and he was traveling further and further closer to homes,
Mm-hmm.
and that he was, yeah, I mean, probably he was just trying to get food. I mean,
Totally, yeah.
so there was the attack, and to the Chihuahua. I don't know the situation or anything, but between the Chihuahua attack, which wasn't isolated, there were other instances about getting closer to homes. And then when he was captured in order to assess his health, some people were arguing, you know, it was because he attacked a dog in a wealthy neighborhood that they put the means to track him and try to find out what it was wrong. It's an easy connection because it wouldn't be the first time that an issue in the city got attention, because people that have influence and power are bothered by it, when the same issue could be happening for years and years in a different community and no one really cares. The argument was valid, but it was so intense at some point that some conservationists, they had to come forward and said, no, that's not the case. There's no connection. There's always been this fine line between conservation and intervention. So they were just looking at a trend. The Chihuahua attack wasn't the trigger. It was a trend that they found out based on tracking him. And I'm explaining this not to make it like a sensationalist point, but to just kind of like give you a sense of how much passion there's been
Mhm.
behind him.
Right.
Yeah. And the attack was on the news, apparently. And you know how the local news, it's just like almost pop culture. They love, yeah, to bring up the worst of the worst.
Of course. Yeah, I had it was interesting kind of when that happened and seeing just on social media how many people
Oh,
that were my friends, spoke like, out
oh,
about it. And,
uh-huh.
I was surprised of how, to your point, Julio, how many people are, I don't know, I don't want to say fans, but like the weight of him, like the meaning of him. And Dina said it really beautifully. I'll pull up what she said in the chat. She said, he was trying to thrive in a limited environment, alone and struggling at times without anyone noticing or outside help. Yes, easy to understand how people identified with his existence.
Yeah.
I
Yes.
think that's so beautiful, so well said. Um, well, so one of my girlfriends is she is a, oh my gosh, I don't know what the word is, but she essentially keeps dogs. Like she walks
Foster, like,
dogs, but then, yes, she does that too. But she also like Harry, my dog, spent
yeah.
like,
Oh,
a month with her at Christmas, sort of thing. So
yeah.
that's like her business is dogs and dog walking and keeping dogs and yeah, and fostering dogs and whatnot. And she loves P-22, and she said,
Oh, wow.
she said my favorite cat killed a dog, and she said this
Oh,
is why you don't walk your dogs in the winter after like 3:30 or something.
right, right. Yeah,
And I was happy to hear that because I wasn't quite sure where it was going to go.
yeah,
But
yeah, yeah, yeah. Good point.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
yeah, I guess we are, still, we share space with
yeah, we share space.
wild animals, and and whether that's a coyote, a mountain lion, like what have you, a deer, um
Yeah,
yeah, we need to
yeah. We
stay
need to
alert.
cohabitate. I know.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, those are great. Yeah, issues, I think. It's just, it goes from the conservation point, but
Mm-hmm.
also beyond. And, you know, it's the same, it's the same conversation. People always see things either uh black or white. We can do
Mm-hmm.
both. We can do
Oh,
both.
exactly.
We can do both. It's just, it's either we can have wildlife or we can have a city. We cannot have both. No, it's not that.
Yeah, we
Um,
must.
yeah, it's like it was I think it was NPR. I think this weekend there's been, I believe in Canada there's been this big. It's not as important as the climate summits that have been happening, but
Mm-hmm.
there is some sort of like a summit in Canada addressing the decline in biodiversity and how that is as terrifying for the planet and us as climate change. And no one
Mm-hmm.
really talks about it because there's already so much to cope with.
Mm-hmm. I
Um,
know, seriously.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, but so that's the only thing I know. But this made me think of like things we could do also to be aware of it and understand how important it is and all that.
I feel like Julie has a really good handle on that. Even
Mm. Mm.
talking about plants that are indigenous to California
Yeah.
and how much we need them. And I don't want to butcher the ideas of it because she knows so much more than I do. I don't know anything. But yeah, I remember her speaking about it. I can't remember what session we were doing, but plant life and how important it is to relate to biodiversity and and how things thrive specifically in certain climates because it's supposed to, and what it brings, and the bugs. I remember her seeing like the amount of bugs that have been wiped out, and
that's the most important part of the trying to avert the collapse of everything, because they're saying that the insects are what the tent poles of everything. Not just the bees, but everything else. No more butterflies, or species are disappearing, and so apparently it all goes very slowly, like with the climate, until we'll reach a tipping point in which everything's gonna come down. Anyhow, not trying to lower the vibrations of this, but yeah, it was just interesting that's the conservationist aspect of his story. Yeah, and yeah, it's just I'm doing first color notes. I'm going to keep everything monochromatic. One of the things also, if I may take a little segue, that we have learned, not only reducing the amount of subjects and spending more time, but also slowing down and taking more time to layer things over and over. We know that we can just knock a painting out in just a couple of hours and make something super spectacular. And that's the bar, and we know we can do it, and we should be confident and also grateful that we have achieved that kind of like skill. But I found that I enjoy so much building up and then slowing down, that I don't rush as much, knowing that I have a couple of sessions that I'll be able to work on this. So first color notes, I blocked from darker to lighter. I think based on time, we have time. We have, at least 40 minutes. But I wanted to concentrate on this. Maybe I'll just work now on the rest of the body. So a couple of tips. Darker to lighter, block out first. Don't worry about blending. I use a medium brush. I incorporate the oil. There's still going to be transparency in your application of paint. There's more paint to oil, so I build up the amount, I guess, or the opacity, and then my brush strokes are shorter and slower, darker to lighter, and yeah, just pixelating the strokes. Try to also be scattered. I think I need to find a different expression, but just go all over the place. Don't get sucked in. That's only an advice, by the way. Don't get sucked in one area, just because if this is the only shot you have, the only one, you want to be as efficient as you can possibly be. And if you stay for too long in one spot and you leave everything underdeveloped, the reality is that the chances you will have to go back to this painting to quote unquote finish or complete, which we like better, are going to be much reduced. You think you will, but things will happen that will swerve you away from the work. So try to be efficient. Try to build a little bit of surface everywhere. In fact, I'm just going to leave this alone and then go somewhere else, because the truth is that sometimes we tackle one area, we start developing it, and then we see the light at the end of the tunnel. We see that, oh, okay, so I can do this. But then we put every single resource on that area just because we want to go fast through the tunnel and be done with it and be on the other side, which is great and it's valid, but just be aware of that fact. You reduce the chances of working on your painting another time. So I'm just gonna go ahead and then do the same thing on that side of the painting and work on peripheral areas. Sometimes we disregard the peripheral areas because we think background is not focal point, it's not tangible. I'm gonna do that last. We leave the background to the end. And we have experienced this. Backgrounds are the foundation, the stage where everything happens. If you build it first, I'm not saying first, but if you build it like early, you will have such a different experience with the entire process. It's going to be easier. It's going to be like you're complementing your brushstrokes with already something existing on your painting. It's just going to facilitate the process. It's going to speed up the process. It's going to make you less attached to the results. So I don't care what it is. Add some, I don't care what it is. Add some details on the background. So anyhow, that's where I'm at. First color note still. And I'm just trying to build some other parts of the painting. Yeah, so, and I'm just gonna do the background, that's it. Oh, and what else? I was just gonna mention Jane Fonda. I love being up with the art news. So she's putting her art collection for sale, Jen and everyone. And two things. I had no idea that Jane Fonda was an art collector. Yeah, and that she over the years she's been able to actually have a significant collection, and I think it's going to be sold on Christie's.
Yeah.
And for those who, one of the biggest art auctions broke records last year. Everyone else kind of like suffered, but everyone else suffered, but especially the Paul Allen. There was a lot of talk about, I think it was one of the Microsoft founders or something. It was like one of those billionaires, but never been on the public eye compared to the rest of the obnoxious dudes. But I think he passed away, and he had a 1 point something billion worth art collection, and that was a big thing. Well, Jane Fonda, her art collection is not as big, but it's making news, and it's just going to be for sale pretty soon, I believe. And it's all about American art, by the way. It's just so interesting because I love this stuff because it kind of like gives you the preview of who the person may be. And we're totally judging based on subjective things. But the core of the collection is American art, folk art, and I don't know which, mostly folk art, I believe. So she, unlike Paul Allen, she wasn't interested in the French or European. I love that aspect about her because, sometimes people still criticize her for her political positions, but she has been a great supporter of American culture and American art, and I had no idea about it. Another thing that I also find interesting is that she's doing this. It's going to sound stupid, but while she's alive, the Paul Allen collection, he passed away and they liquidated his stuff. I don't know if whoever was alive, I mean, whoever is alive, they just want to sell the whole thing and split up the money. But there's something a little bit dark about what happens with your art collection or the art collection of others when you pass away, when you die. But she's doing it when she's alive. And I think that's also something very significant about not relinquishing your power and actually doing something when you get closer, much closer to the end than you are to the beginning. I'm gonna, and then just doing whatever you want with it.
Yeah.
What do you think, Jen? I don't know.
Yeah, I
Just-
don't know either.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk about her collection, her art collection, but I think people are just going to miss the point of this kind of like significant things in comparison to.
Right. Yeah. No, I have to think about that. That's, I don't know that I have like an answer to that. That's so interesting. I also, you know, the fact that it's not going to be passed down to her
Yeah.
children, you
Yeah.
know, or grandchildren.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, what's that about? Like, I immediately am like,
It's interesting.
right? Like, is there some sort of
Yeah. Beef.
beef? Exactly. What does that say about me? I love that you have this like beautiful, optimistic, like, you know, and I'm immediately like, but what the hell?
Yeah. Yeah, you're
You
right.
know, grandma's selling off her art collection. Maybe I wanted the Monet, you know, whatever. I don't know.
Interesting. That's also very interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I want to find out more mostly because we get shocked all this news about what the billionaires do and what they own and stuff like that. And in the case of someone who doesn't fit that specific bill, you know, the gender bill, I guess, I'm more curious about what they do with their fortune, especially when they have like a big art collection. I'm just like curious because, you know, pretty much all yeah. So I don't know.
Well, you know, like you said, her like politics, you know, can be polarizing. And maybe there's this thing of, you know, maybe she's like, I mean, I have no idea, no idea. But maybe there's this thing about her that's like enough, like how, you know, like how much does one person need?
Right.
But that being said, like, I mean, if that's the case, then this person that has benefited over and over again from, you know, her.
Yeah. And she's also not donating anything to museums because usually, you know, people revere the philanthropic approach of people with a lot of money and almost it's sort of like give them a pass because at the end they donate everything that's culturally significant, and that somehow makes them heroes, which I don't know, I have my thoughts on it, but she's not donating anything to any museums. She's just selling it like a hard sale, you know.
Yeah.
So
And then
that's
and then she'll have the money, obviously.
yeah. And I don't know, maybe she's going to do something different because talking about environmentalism and activism, she's been so always her entire life has been
very much, yes.
Yeah, about these causes. So maybe I don't know. It's just anyhow, so that's something that people talk about and it's going to happen. And have you heard of the Yayoi Kusama and Louis Vuitton collaboration?
No.
Yeah, so big talk about, you know that they did something together a few years ago, Louis Vuitton and Yayoi Kusama? So they did a collection of bags. They did a capsule collection, mostly bags and stuff like that in 2012. So they are launching now a much bigger collaboration between her and Louis Vuitton. Bags, clothes, merchandise, and the Fifth Avenue store in New York. If you go to New York again, that's your homework. You have to go to the Louis Vuitton shop
On Fifth.
because
Okay.
they did sort of like an installation, and they installed a robot of her on the window that is eeringly.
I have seen it.
You've seen it.
I haven't seen it in person, but I just saw it last night.
Yeah. So, and
It is eerie.
yeah, so painting the window, you have no idea the polarizing conversations about this topic, about Yayoi Kusama. She's 93. She lives, I mean, even the language. There were some art critics that were saying this is absolutely awful. The worst part of like corporate America, dilutes her body of work, makes her work too commercial, like savage criticism. And some people are saying, you know what? She has earned the right to do whatever she wants with the brand that she created. And she spent decades being invisible and no one really caring for what she was doing. And now, while she's still alive, if she's making money off of it, good on her. You know, people are
Yeah,
supportive.
exactly.
I'm on that side. I think it's unfair to just criticize her for doing something that pretty much, you know, everyone's doing.
Grief.
Yeah, but it's a big topic. And then there's a lot of ableist conversation around her. She's 93. She can make her own decisions. Who's doing these decisions for her? Who's making the money? Because it's all licensing. The bags, the purses, they go for about $8,000, and they're just going to do 3 collections, not just a capsule collection. So yeah, there's like a little, and also we recommended, by the way, if you haven't watched it, put it on your queue, add it on your list, make a mental note about the Yayoi Kusama documentary. I think right now it's on Hulu. If you have it, it used to be on Amazon Prime. I think it's called Yayoi Kusama Infinity or something like that. And it explains her life since she was young, on her own words. So excerpts of interviews, but also interviews for this documentary. And you will never see her work through the same eyes when you actually learn how difficult and bold and daring and amazing her life journey is, from Japan, the family that she was born in, the decisions that she made. It's so inspiring. It's so incredible. It makes you angry because the little recognition until much later in her life that she had, the reasons why she does the dots, her arrival to New York, it's just like, you know, just so beautiful. Highly recommend if you want to feel inspired and watch something about art, watch the Yayoi Kusama documentary. And I think it got so many views by, not compared to other things, but so many views by artists, that's why this is so explosive right now, because people understood or understand what an important artist she is. I think we've said this before, Jen, but if you use the museum ticket sales as the metric to find out who is the most important contemporary living artist today, just by the ticket sales in museums, bar none, she has sold more tickets, or the exhibition have sold of her, than any other contemporary living artist today. And yet she's not as well known, or
Right.
yeah, it's all about the other. But going back to the ableism and ageism, people say, this is shady, who's doing the decisions for her. And she's always had like a very strong team of people for decades that have worked with her. She's always make the ultimate decisions, but she does have like a team of people. And by her own choice, she suffered a lot of breakdowns for several reasons. And you need to watch the documentary. But she made the choice of living in a facility that is specialized in mental health care. It's not a psychic ward. People just say, she's 93 and she is in a psychic ward, or they just portray her as if she doesn't have the power of decide for herself. And that's why there's a big controversy about this, when in fact, she decided to live there because she felt safer in a place where she felt taken care of than in just like real life, I guess, or normal life. And it's funny when people make assumptions, especially in today's world of mental health, and how brutal people are in judging other people based on things, and especially with mental health. It's just, we're not quite there. We're all quite ignorant, and I include myself in the we category. Anyhow, so that's been a super big controversial topic. So I just took care of a few things on the rest of the body, just to bring up the rest to some level of parity with what I did on the face. I'm gonna work on edge quality. So things that we can do. We still have like a good 20 minutes. And I think strategy-wise and thinking again, this is pretending that this is your shot, your only shot. What would I do? I would start perhaps blending. If you can, I would pick one spot where I will put more details. Don't forget the edge quality. There's something about the images taken of P-22 that they don't look like collages. Obviously, these images are of him in its habitat, which means that most of them, there's a sense of blending with the habitat. From the visual perspective, from a painter's perspective, use that to your advantage, whether it's a color palette, whether you decide you want to bring harmony, color harmony or not, but also a great way to integrate a focal point like this one with the background is to create softer sfumato-like edges. We created this polarity towards the end of the year using the words sfumato versus pizzicato, just because they rhyme, not because they are in art books. Sfumato is. We're using pizzicato, which belongs to the musical realm, to define brushstrokes that are sharp, that are detailed, and that they give you a clear distinction between what's outside of the brushstroke and what's not. And that's the opposite of sfumato, which we've used many times before to define edges that disintegrate, they're foggy, and they almost like blend with the background in a very soft, gradual way. So get this polarity, this sfumato versus pizzicato, and find out how you want to implement it artistically, if you want to consider it. Do a scan of the image, thinking or putting your sfumato glasses, imagining that those glasses allow you to see all the foggy, blurry edges, identify them, locate them, track them, and then decide if you want to use them on your translation. Change your glasses and put on the pizzicato glasses and find out if there's anything on that image that is sharper than. It doesn't have to be super sharp, but sharper. Is it the focus? I think all those photographs were taken with a really wide depth. I forgot the words. Anyhow, it'll come back to me. But yes, depth of field. Thanks. I'm thanking myself. That's where we're at.
I like looked down to be like, did someone fill him in?
No.
I love it.
We're talking. Anyhow, the voices in our heads. Anyhow, so the depth of field, it's much wider. So you won't see a lot of creative edge work, but that doesn't mean like we don't have to introduce it in our work. And we feel that creates it's an easy way to create a powerful visual experience. I'm catching my breath and I'm just gonna go ahead and work on the edges and see if I can bring some blurriness in certain spots. Like for example, here. So I'm gonna exaggerate that. Also, as I do that, think of the light direction, because I think that's very important. So in this case, I identified the hot spots or where the light reflects a little bit more. I'm going to work on those in the last maybe 5 minutes, but right now I really want to work with the sfumato effect and create almost a very subtle, almost unidentifiable, Jesus. I'm too ambitious with words. I bite more than I can chew. I think that's the expression. Yeah, we finished 3 books this past year. And the last one, The Mirror on the Palette, we read This Dark Country, The Mirror on the Palette, and I forgot the one previous to that. And they were amazing. We learned so much about female artists, but also about the art process. I'm just jumping to that topic because it's related to what we're doing. Some of the artists were clear about, we're talking about artists from the last 500 years. Some of them, the ones that we have more paper trail, more history, more documents that were left behind, correspondence and diaries. Some of them, there's nothing left. But some of them, we do have even autobiographies. One thing that's stands out, it's how some of them were very protective of solitude as something that was extremely important for creativity. They sacrificed a lot in order to have time to paint. I'm not preaching anything here, but it was interesting to find out that that's been a universal sort of like approach. One of them is still alive. I forgot her name, but I will remember. She was, I hate this, but it is what it is. I remember that she was one of the romantic relationships of Lucian Freud. I should say the opposite. She's from the UK. She's still alive, and yeah, that's one of the reasons why that relationship, one of the many reasons, didn't work, because both of them were artists. That's number one. And they both of them, they needed solitude in order to create. Like, it's a sacred condition, time alone, time away
A
from
room of one's
distractions.
own.
Say that again.
I just said a room of one's own.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, fascinating. Yeah, so it was nice to read that this thread that we feel happens right now after the pandemic, it's not something new. It's not like we're more distracted now than we were necessarily before. It's always been the case. And some, you know, some artists found strategies. Some artists had the privilege of being able to not have the restrictions. I mean, distractions. Victoria Miro represents her. Celia Paul. Celia Paul. Thank you very much. Again.
Thank you, myself.
That's where we're at. Amazing life. Jeez, amazing portraits. Celia Paul, please put it on your list of artists, favorite artists. I don't care. It's incredible body of work. Speaking of artists, Vivienne Westwood, who passed away recently, a very interesting life. Also, she did fashion, but she was an artist. You know, she started with painting and stuff, and it was just another person who passed away in 2022. Another artist. I don't know why I went there, but again, you know, just one of those artists that, you know, they exist, but you don't know that much about them except something. But then with the memorials and people talking and stuff, you're like, oh my gosh, what an incredible creative force. So I'm just going to keep also some softness on the ears. I feel like the ears are a little bit too harsh on mine. This reminds me, somehow, it reminds me to the Afghan Hound series. Remember, Jen? I love those paintings.
Yeah, totally.
So good. I remember Lois Afghan Hound vividly.
Oh my gosh. Yes. And I just was reminded of it at her show.
Yeah.
It was
Wow.
incredible. I remember Darlene's too. But I think, did Lois buy Darlene's?
I don't know.
Sorry, not to put anybody on the spot. I feel like Darlene did sell that one.
Yeah, that was pretty powerful. That was very powerful. That was an amazing series.
Lordy. Yeah.
All right, I'm going to concentrate now on bringing a little bit more definition on the triangle of sadness. Have you seen this movie yet, Jen? You have to, if you haven't.
Uh-oh, I missed it.
No,
I think
have you seen
out.
Triangle of Sadness?
Oh my gosh, I almost sent it to you because of, you know, obviously all of the, well, not all of the Golden Globe recognition it got. And then last night I was thinking about going to the movies and it came up, but there were no show times. And I was like, and I haven't seen it yet.
If you watch it, I mean, it's just interesting. I'm not spoiling everything, the triangle of sadness refers to, initially at the beginning of the movie, you get the reason for the title, which is essentially the keystone that we talk about so much. So instead of like calling it the keystone, we call it the triangle of sadness. And then the triangle of sadness becomes something else later in the movie. Has nothing to do with the eyes. But yeah, so I'm just gonna work on a different triangle of sadness on P-22, but that's why I brought that up. So many movies this year. I'm more excited about the movies this year than last year because they're more about art and artists than last year, I believe. Maybe the title for this one, it just made me laugh, but also other ones in a different way related to. But I'm sure we'll have conversations when we finish the webinar about it. But when I watched the movie and they mentioned the triangle of sadness, I elbowed Keon. It's like, see? This is what it means. We've talked about this. Yeah. All right, so a few more minutes. Maybe like we'll do like 7 more minutes, I guess, a little bit after the second hour. And anything, I'm just gonna get my tiniest brush right now that essentially it feels like it's like a toothpick. It looks like there are no bristles right here, but there are. It's ridiculous. I just wanted to bring up our amazing Halloween session. You guys, we're going save Halloween. I don't know what are we gonna do, but we're gonna do the same thing somewhere else. But Jen just set up an easel with my brushes, and then Darlene got that easel and she started painting with my brushes, and she says, "What is this?" Because they're ridiculous. So it always makes me laugh. I need to do something about it, obviously, but
Oh God, that took me a minute to remember that happened. Poor Darlene was like, I'm just struggling.
I can't
And I
paint.
was like, I went over and I was like, oh my gosh, Darlene, no wonder you're painting with Julio's nasty brushes.
I know.
Oh,
Geez.
she was like, I was just so confused.
Yeah.
Everything.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm still, I should say, we should say new year, new brushes, but that should be one of the painting resolutions. You know, we did it last year and we took our time, but I feel like we should do some painting resolutions also this year. It was nice to go back to that list and see. It felt so far back in time. Yeah, so maybe we should do something. I'll type something up.
Love it.
Yeah, some painting. I mean, I feel like for the rest of life, I don't even want to go there. It's been so heavy, like collectively, that there's so little oxygen. If you notice, Jen, I'm not the only one. There hasn't been much airtime for resolutions. You know, usually it was like everywhere. Social media, it was like, these are what I'm gonna do. None of it, at least on mine, on my feeds, no one's posting anything. And
You're so right. People
we're,
are like, forget it.
we're so exhausted of living like historic times that people are not even making any predictions. Yeah, but we'll do it for painting purposes. That was a good reminder at the end of the year. Okay, so yeah, I love that highlight. I'm gonna bring some more of that. I'm just gonna diffuse the nostril or something here that needs to be softened and almost curved. You know, sometimes, yeah, exaggerating goes a long way. So exaggerate values or even positions. Try not to be too attached to results. I think this could be a good resolution. Practice more detachment. The more you mess with it, the more contrite it's going to look like. The more, yeah, I think that would be the word, contrite, like trying to be something, but ultimately being trapped in its own process. Yeah. So let go more and uh, trespass more. Just trespass. I think that would be another expression I would say. Just go beyond what you think things should be. Um, yeah, I'm just gonna do, and don't be afraid. There's a safe place to confront or get confronted. It's your painting process. You know, you are safe. No one's judging you. You can just go about your journey when you do a painting. This is to be smaller. And because of that safe space and safe context, you should allow yourself to let go more. Sometimes we act so fearful, even when we are in a safe situation. It's not our fault, but I would say practice more letting go. Be more detached of results. I need to work on the eye a little bit. It looks too humanized, too anthropomorphized. Sorry. Yeah, but okay, I'm just gonna mess with it a little bit. And I think that already looks better. That could be another note, you know, if you can put it, remove the word better from your vocabulary. Yes, I'm gonna make a mental note. I think that's a good. Did you hear about that Stanford list before the year ended, Jen? Stanford University published a list of recommended expressions and words that were much more appropriate, or yeah. And I thought it was an excellent list. I appreciated the fact that they put some thought, and then but people just went bananas. It's just people went like super, they got triggered by yeah. And I thought it was good. I thought it was an interesting, the reason for the publishing was addressed to mostly the professors, and also when people would write papers and research and stuff. And it was a recommendation to yeah, just find a different term to express the same thing. I love this kind of stuff. I forgot which examples, but one of them, for example, I'm gonna finish in 1 minute, was the expression trigger warning. When you want to say something and you know your audience has people that may get hurt by it, usually there's this sort of like disclaimer, trigger warning. But the thing is that when you say trigger warning, that expression alone already triggers you to know that you have to expect something outrageous to, come your way. So I think I forgot the expression that they recommend to use instead to avoid this sort of like, I thought it was really interesting. But anyhow, so this is my first pass of P-22 portrait. I'm very excited for the stage. I'm happy that I chose something that I feel like it's more conceptual than visual. Sometimes we talk about the story you want to tell and the style you want to tell the story with. And, it just depends on the painting. Sometimes you want the style to come first and the story to give you the second punch. But with this, I just played with more of a conceptual approach in which, it's a snapshot of P-22 with a night camera, very monochromatic. I like the composition and arrangement. These are the basic criteria. I think sometimes we set the bar way too high after pass number 1. We're here to tell you lower that bar a little bit and have a conversation with yourself about spatial arrangement, light direction, edge quality. Every single piece of work that we do in one session is always a work in progress. So just, have that in mind. We're going to take a break. 1:15, let's reconvene. And if you can do a few things, make sure you break or take a break, I'm sorry, stretch, very important, hydrate, and do a toilet break. And also take a photo and upload. And it doesn't matter if you only have a sketch or a blur, it's okay. We're going to stop recording and then we can have a conversation later. So we'll see you at 1:15. Thanks, everyone.